Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Con Carolina's 2020 podcasting panel, just sort of like an intro to podcasting for people who are interested in getting into it. I'm Shannon Strucci. I'm the new media track director for Con Carolinas. I'm on the teen superhero actual play podcast, Critical Bits, and I'm the film correspondent for the podcast Struggle Session. I'm just going to kind of go around so everyone can introduce yourself. Just sort of like say who you are, where people can find you, and what podcast you're on or what podcast experience you have or stuff like that. And let's start with Adam.
Hello, I'm Adam LaGrave. You can find me on Twitter mainly, at Adam LaGrave, and I am on two podcasts mainly, two. The Roaring Trainers is a D&D 5e Pokemon podcast, actual play. And then also DM's Treehouse is another actual play podcast featuring 4 DMs that rotate out, and we have a bunch of different campaigns and stories going on.
Cool. Daryl?
Hey, everybody. My name is Daryl. You can find me mostly on Twitter at CDelicious. I host a podcast network called the Paprika Network. It's like paprika with an O instead of an A. It's a pop culture-based network with a whole bunch of shows. You can find it pretty much wherever podcasts are.
Jonah?
Hello, everyone. I'm Jonah M. Jackson. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Jonah M. Jackson. I am a player and GM and other things on Quest Company and Quest Company Junior, 2 actual play RPG podcasts. One family friendly, one not so much. And we play D&D, we play like Pokemon games, a lot of Powered by the Apocalypse stuff. We go all over the RPG spectrum.
Nash?
I'm Nash. I've been doing a live stream Radio Dead Air since 2000, so this July it's going to be 20 years. I normally we do a live show with music and pop culture and all that stuff. We also have been doing for a long time a weekly segment on stupid news, and it's called "What the F is Wrong with You?" Trying to be family friendly here. And we've condensed that from the live stream. So that's a weekly segment that we've done. We've sent it to YouTube. We sent it to, it's actually a downloadable on my Patreon audio. And yeah, I've been working with that for long time.
Joel?
Yeah, my name's Joel Rez, and you can find me at Joel W. Ruiz on Twitter, and then I run the podcast Critical Bits, which Shannon is on. That's an actual play. And then I also, this is not out, but we have the first 6 episodes recorded. I've finally begun editing them. I'm also on a fan cast show about Riverdale called Jingle Jangle. And we talk about Riverdale. So, I have a little bit of experience in the AP world and a little bit of experience in the talk, force my media likes on other people world.
Being a guest on that show, yeah, that's an accurate description. So my next question is just kind of like, what drew you to podcasting, or if you've done other like video or other art forms or live performance, what is different about podcasting, or what do you like or dislike about it? And we're just going to go with the way the Zoom call is counterclockwise. And if you want to go again, Joel, then we'll go back around.
Yeah. So I have a heavy like stand-up and film background. That's what I did for most of my 20s, that whole decade. And then I started getting into podcasting because I wanted to start an actual play. And then after the actual play is whenever I decided to start the other one. And I think it's just the ease of access is a big part of it. Like I said, I did stand-up for years, and I've done a lot of like short films. I helped 2 friends like shoot a whole feature-length movie last year for like nothing. And so I've definitely played in a couple different things, but I think just the accessibility to be able to podcast, and then how you can have it reach without, because it's a lot of word of mouth. I think that's kind of like what initially drew me.
Mm-hmm.
Nash?
I'm kind of in a weird position because I predate podcasting, which is very strange. Because
an audio medium, we could say.
Yeah, well, when I first started doing it, there was nothing to play it on. The idea of downloading, say, a 50 megabyte file was like too much for most people's connections back then.
Mm-hmm.
But we did have the live audio. It was a shoutcast, the live stream. It was not really great quality, but as I kept doing my show as time went on, I realized people wanted something other than a live option. There was the option people were having, they could finally download stuff. So yeah, I started kind of incorporating it both ways. I would premiere the thing live, and then I would make things available for download, and it became a more convenient way for people to be able to access my stuff. Not everybody can be there every Monday at 9 live, so.
Jonah?
Yeah, so I am primarily an actor and puppeteer. I do a lot of theater around Nashville and a little bit of film stuff here and there. Mostly theater, though. I have a strong background in a lot of Shakespeare, and I do musicals and stuff. Work all around town. But so I actually got into podcasting pretty late in the game. It was actually getting close to 3 years ago. Was when we started. It's actually tomorrow is 3 years ago to the day, the first episode of the Quest Company that we recorded, which is wild to think about. So I got into podcasting actually because a buddy of mine was like, "Oh yeah, listen to The Adventure Zone," and I was like, "Oh what? Oh, podcaster thing. This is cool. Didn't listen to these before." And I was like, oh, yeah, I also had not gotten into Dungeons and Dragons before that. And so I was actually, the theater and the podcasting is very connected for me because that winter of 2016, whatever it was, I was doing a production of Romeo and Juliet, and a bunch of the guys who were actually on the podcast, Joe Lidas, Andrew Johnson, Joe Cash, we were all in this production of Romeo and Juliet, and this one surfer bro dude, Mason, love him, who's playing Romeo. He's just a big old nerd at heart. First weekend of rehearsal, he's like, "So, who wants to play D&D?" And we're like, okay, sure. I haven't done this before. And so when we played, it was like, this is awesome. And, we're all actors. And so we all get into the characters in the story and get really invested in it. And so then, after it, we were like, well, we should just keep doing that and make it a podcast. And so from there, we've just kept going and kept going. It's been so much fun.
Daryl?
Like Joel, I also did stand up for quite some time. I did it while I was in South Korea in the military for a couple of years. That was a bug that I caught very quickly, the entertainment bug. So when I got back to the States, I wanted to continue doing something like that. And I've been listening to podcasts for a while. And eventually it was like, well, this is it. This has to be it. Just figured podcast which is why I talk about a lot of different pop culture stuff. And it's led me down some interesting and incredible paths that I wasn't exactly necessarily expecting or intending to go down, but I'm very glad for all the opportunities that I've gotten, and I have many more ideas in store from here as well.
And Adam?
Yeah, my beginnings to podcasting a little bit different. I'm not an actor or a comedian or anything cool like that. I'm a musician, did a lot of live performing and doing stuff like that and recording music. And then my friend posted on social media almost 3 years ago, much like Jonah, "Hey, I'm thinking about starting a Pokemon podcast. Anyone interested?" I just responded "Yeah, that sounds like fun." And he was like, "I don't really know." I'm like, "Hey, I have all the recording equipment." And he's like, "Sweet, you're in. Let's do it." And then I just really loved it.
It's kind of like it's kind of like everybody in the band does something and you're the dude with the van.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That's like a Zoom.
That's not just podcasting, everybody. That's anything. If you have the equipment, people don't even have to like you. But they gotta use you.
They don't care if you're good. Not gonna like you.
I bought my way in. It's fine.
But you're there. That's what's important.
Yeah, I'm still here. I think that. Yeah,
you hung on.
This is a more I can just open up the conversation instead of calling on people one by one. But what would you say stands out about podcasts that you enjoy and that you're into, or what would you say stands out about your own show? Because I feel like one of the it's wonderful that it's such an accessible medium and that almost anyone can do it, but that means that there's so many shows. And for me, stuff that I've gotten into has had a very unique voice and very high production values are the two things I think that I've been drawn to the most. Like, I'm not going to get this out of any other show, and also this doesn't sound like it was recorded next to a refrigerator. So those are my things. But yeah.
I think a podcast should be two things specifically. It needs to be entertaining and informative. As long as you have those two things down pat for me, as long as I can be like, hey, I really enjoyed that last 30 or 45 minutes, and I also kind of learned something new. That's what'll draw me to a show. As far as standout shows, I know my main show, Paprika, is the structure of the format is kind of not like most of your podcasts. Most podcasts, it's more straightforward, A to Z. This is the information we're doing. This is what we're doing. This is what we're playing. Whereas my show was broken up into 3-act structures. You know, the first act is this, and then we take a little bit of break, and then second act we're going to talk about one specific thing and really get into the weeds. And then third act is whatever the season's brackets are. And the fact that my show has seasons, which is something that wasn't quite seen until recently. I think that kind of stands me out from a couple of the other different shows out there. And then that also brings in the anticipation factor. Like, all right, season 4 is done. Now you get nothing for 4 or 5 weeks, and then, oh, it's almost time for season 5. So, you know, you can kind of create anticipation that way as well.
I have to, I was going to say, I have to agree with you, Shannon, about the production value. The only time I give people a chance on their show if the production value is low is if I already know them, and I'll be like, all right, well, they're figuring it out. But just to be honest, like, if I'm just like checking out a new show and it sounds, you know, like everyone's around one iPhone, I just quit. I'll just quit and not listen again. Maybe I'll go forward a little bit, and I know that it is like a barrier of entry, but that is something for me. And then also just like, I guess it kind of pairs with that. Like, I like a show that's edited down. I know some people think that all podcasts should be part of the tape. You're a friend, you're listening, you're just like hearing people riff and things like that. But like, just cut your stuff down. Listen, like, just be way more brutal to yourself. Not saying that you're not funny or informative, but just like, take that time, cut out your cut out your find what terrible speech patterns you have, and just put in a little more effort. It really comes across so well. And the thing is, it's one of those weird things about editing in general. The sign of a good editor is that you don't know they were there. It's really, it doesn't have like a big like reward, but just like, I as an editor can always tell, like, someone's put some little more time into this, like, you know, and made an effort. And, you know, I would forgive, like, you know, lower quality sound if I could tell you're putting in effort other places. But I don't know, I kind of just feel like a podcast where it's just kind of like, we're going to put it out just to put it out and we don't really care. That's fine. You can see how much you got out of not caring.
Yeah. No, and yeah, kind of in that vein, Joel, I agree 100%, like, with the production value and everything. And as far as like a show, you know, if it's like iffy from the get-go, like if they've got more of a backlog, I'm like always very willing to be like, if I check out the first episode, it's like, okay, you know, maybe the quality is not so great, whatever. Like, I'll skip ahead and like see if they've worked to improve it since then. And if it's like gotten better, then I'm like, okay, like, I'm willing to go through the backlog to get there because you worked on it. But if it just like is there and stays there, I'm like, yeah, I can probably do without. And the same way, like, yeah, production value for us, like, you know, for our show, we had no idea what the heck we were doing when we started podcast. We're like, what is this? I don't know. We just wanted to play D&D. So I guess, you know, our buddy Joe had like a nicer microphone. It was still like one omnidirectional one in the middle of the table. It's like, you know, what are you going to do? At least it wasn't like an iPhone, but, you know, whatever. And, you know, we've gradually grown to the point where, you know, thanks to, you know, like patrons or whatever, we've been able to, like, you know, got it where everybody's got their own microphone. And we've learned, hey guys, if you're thinking about podcasting, you're thinking about doing an in-person podcast, get dynamic mics, get dynamic microphones, because they will save you so much headache in the long run with you know, crosstalk and mic bleed and everything, rather than like condensers. Get dynamic mics. Learn from me and my life choices. But yeah, and then like as far as you know, what's different for us and like our show, you know, there's for me, in the shows that I like and what what we try to do in our podcast. It's, telling a good story and people having a good time. Those are the key things. As long as like the players are having fun, and the people around are like invested in the story and the characters and what's going on, like there will always be good stuff if everybody's willing to play in that space. It's also, as the GM and editor of certain things, I also do a lot of like, if I flub my words in the moment doing something, I'll just be like, and just say it again because I have the freedom to edit it later. With ours being a longer format, sort of actual play podcast, longer episodes, like I will frequently cut 15 to 30 minutes of audio from a recording because I don't need it.
Well, it's also that
neither does the listener.
An actual play is different from a conversational podcast in that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Where that edit, you really should edit it. Whereas a conversation, I really like Chapo Trap House. So let's listen to that one.
Mm-hmm.
Like I listen to most episodes. That's just them talking about stuff. I have no expectation of something being cut unless there's like a reason for it to be cut.
Right.
If I'm listening to an actual play and people are arguing about game rules or they're just going off on some riff that's not really relevant or not really funny. It's like, okay, this is storytelling. So I think it also depends on what you're doing and how much time you have to.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And the length of the intended episode and versus what's like, obviously if you got a 20-minute podcast, you're not going to edit out 15 minutes at this conversation or whatever. But when you got a longer one, yeah, it's a podcast by podcast thing. But yes, to editing the stuff that's not needed.
Mm-hmm. So what I had a question to ask about, like specifically about microphones or about software, but I guess I can ask more generally for technical advice. Like, would you recommend a certain microphone over another one, or is it just more important that everyone get their own mic and not be all talking into a snowball in the middle of the room? Like, what have y'all learned as you've gone along that you would recommend for someone without a lot of money?
This is something that anyone can do, and this is how I'm sure so many other people have the same story. YouTube and Googling things is your best friend, and that's not like just talking to anybody, but like literally. There is a market for every bracket of money that you have to spend on things to get into there, and just spend like a week Googling. Okay, I will say this: I am on I'm on a condenser right now, but I already you can get good sound out of condensers, but for cheap. But there's a lot of extra work you got to do in post for it. So there is like a give and take. I wanted to get but anyways, but it's if you're looking for a condenser or a dynamic for under a certain price range, just Google the crap out of it and then spend time. There is 30 nerds that have all done comparison videos over the 13 different mics that are all $50 you've looked at, and they will break everything down. And if you don't know all the jargon they're using to explain it, Google that. Like it is, and because the main thing is like. Sometimes I might tell you, like this mic, I have bought it for 5 different prices, and ranging anywhere from like $68 to $98, and it is just whatever the seller feels like. But but instead of just like one certain thing, figure out if you want dynamic or condenser, and if you don't know that, figure out the difference. Those are only 2 types of mics. But like I said, just actually do your research. Is the biggest thing, because I think a lot of people do want a quick answer of like, oh, what is the best thing to buy? It's just like, well, there's so many variations, but just as a general thing, like just if you're thinking about doing it, just spend the time, figure out how much money you have, but definitely within your budget when you're trying to figure out what that budget is, the main thing should be, how do I get everyone on a separate mic channel?
Yeah,
is the biggest thing. And so like that's where you need to like focus on, I think. Like I said, so just figure out what your budget per mic is for however many people is to get everyone on one mic, and then once you figure out that price range, just start looking for that. But like I said, that's more of like but I mean, because it is just, you can just go out and buy a snowball if you're by yourself. It's not terrible, but like I said, there's a lot more factors, and everybody's setup is different. How many people are in it? Like how easy? Yeah, so like I said, it is. But so that's kind of what I think you should just do, is like to put the research time in.
Yeah, along with the Googling and everything. Like, if you've got friends that do this, ask your friends, because they'll be happy to tell you like, hey, I did this, don't do this, or oh, I've heard that this is like a good fix, or this is something that we've tried. Like Joel and I have talked extensively. We've, had, a lot of the same equipment. And over time, we've been like, hey, I'm thinking about trying this out. Like, you've been using it. What do you think? Oh, well, yeah, I like this about it, but, look out for this issue or that kind of thing. Like, talk to people about it and, have, if people who do it, their personal experience is going to be super valuable.
Nash or Adam, do y'all have anything?
I agree with that. You have to get on your own channel. Otherwise, because people speak at such different volumes and tones and things like that. If you're all in one mic, you can't separate those out and you can't fix them or, add a little highs here, a little lows. So getting on your own channel that's key, I think.
Yeah.
If you're in the same room, I mean, if you're doing it remotely, everyone should be on their own channel anyways, but
yeah.
Well, if you're going to do this or pretty much anything that involves recording and whatnot, you're going to have to consign yourself to the fact that you're going to have to learn audio engineering just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to learn how to, I mean, if you're at a rock bottom budget, you're going to have to learn how to work Audacity. You're going to have to learn how to work Pro Tools. You're going to have to learn terminology. You're going to have to learn what the equipment is and how it works. You're going to have to learn because one of the aspects of podcasting is unless you are stupid loaded, you're doing most of it yourself. You can't, I mean, you can hire somebody, but then it kind of gets that. If you try and hire somebody to do audio work and you'll understand why it's very expensive to do. So you'll understand why trying to learn how to do it yourself is kind of valued. Just be prepared to, it can be intimidating because there is a lot going on, but don't let that sway. You're just going to, it's like with anything else. If you're going to get into guitar, you're going to have to learn how to tune it. You're going to have to learn how to set it up. You're going to have to learn, if you're going to get into film, you're going to have to understand cameras. You're going to have to understand it's just like any other kind of activity or hobby. You're going to have to learn. You have to, if you can accept that when you step into it, you'll be just.
Now, counterpoint to everything we just said, just find someone like Adam that has all the gear and will do all the editing and just show up.
That too. There's that too.
Show up and then leave. And then just wait for it to come out.
And just let me cry myself to sleep every night.
Yep. What are you going to do? I will say also, from like an equipment standpoint, when we were making the switch over to like dynamics rather than condensers, like I did some looking around and like you can get we actually have a couple of this mic and it's a great doofer mic. You can literally get it for like $23. The Behringer XM 8500 is like a super cheap but works dynamic mic. So if you're trying to outfit a 4-person podcast for literally less than $100, you can have 4 mics and everybody will be on their own channel and they're dynamic, so it's going to be just for them, and it's a lot nicer than the $150 that you'd spend on like a Yeti for everybody to talk around.
Yeah, can I add to that? Because there's a great point here. You have to understand where you want your podcast to go too, because if you're shooting to be like one of the biggest, most professional sounding podcasts out there, 1, good luck. 2, like you're gonna have to spend some money. Jonah sounds amazing on this mic how much was it? You said it was like $25.
Well, this is my nice mic. This is a nice mic.
Oh, okay. The other one.
This is the Procaster.
Yeah,
but
I have, I got a Shure 7B, which is a really expensive mic, and I feel like I sound pretty much the same as I did on my cheaper mic before. Maybe it's a little bit better, but there's a point of diminishing returns that you just need to find that point too.
Yeah,
and editing will help you way more than buying a more expensive mic.
And eBay, because audio gear doesn't really go obsolete and it doesn't go bad. If it works, it works.
Yeah,
eBay is your friend. This microphone I'm using right now, Audio Technica, I forget which it is, but I've
like the 2020 or something.
No, this is 30, 35, something like this. It was like new something like a $400 mic. I've had this thing for almost 2 decades.
Yeah, there's
They
Nice.
last forever.
I was gonna say, yeah, there's like you Google stuff and like what's the standard mic, and they're like, oh, it's been the same for 30 years and it hasn't changed. One thing I know this kind of got pointed out what Adam was saying, like the levels and things like that for the different channels, but as far as editing goes, or like in actual post, it's not just about like being able to like level everybody out. You can make everything sound so much better, especially if like people were like remote and things like that. If you have the ability to edit each individual channel and stuff like that, because like it's like I said, yes, there's some about volume level, but like that is why we're talking about getting that. And I think so to kind of segue into, you have to realize when you're actually recording something, some people will just get like a mixer. But when you record through certain things, it just outputs as a solid channel with 4 mics. That is a different thing, because what you want to try to get, like I said, you know, especially if you're just doing kind of like a talking podcast, if you have a board that you can at least like, you know, level the different channels and then it's all in one, you can kind of work with that. But the main thing is you got to look at your mics, and then you got to actually look at your interface and how you're recording, because if you're still recording to just one output channel, it kind of is like you're not giving yourself that leeway. And once again, yes, this is a money barrier. We're not saying that you have to do it, but like that's the thing to keep in mind is like how you're actually recording. And then there's plenty of ones too, you know, that you can get cheap or, you know, different. Like we have like these little Behringer UMC 200 boxes that are, like I said, those are fine, and you can get ones with like up to 4 channels and just run it through your computer, and then
that's what we had was the Behringer 404.
Yeah, so like I said, there's it all really just depends, but like I said, you got to keep that in mind. But the main thing is you want to be able to have the multiple channels to be able to edit that. And once again, this is more from an actual play standpoint and talking just like casual conversation shows. Because like I said, I started with Critical Bits and then have been editing Jingle Jangle. And it's like, holy shit, y'all.
It's like nothing.
There is nothing, because I'm just kind of like, okay, yeah. Oh, let me just cut out that little dead air. All right, that's someone just, you know, didn't get that set up right. But like, it took me like an hour to edit an episode of Jingle Jangle. It takes me like 5 to 6 hours on average for an episode of Critical Bits.
Yeah.
So you know, it all depends on what kind of what you're doing. But like I said, also do keep in mind of like your actual interface of what you're getting to record all of this with, or to run it to your computer.
Yeah. Multi-track output is what you're looking for. Like terminology wise, you want multi-track. Yeah.
And for struggle session, I mean, we record remotely, and I forget, it's like Zencaster or something. It's one of those websites, or Squadcaster. If like, I think it gives you separate audio files too, but it's just rather than having everyone record separately over Skype and then they record in Audition, it kind of just gives you all the files, which I think there is like probably not the same level of quality versus everyone recording onto their own PC, but it's also like how much time you want to put in versus ease of use. But it's not good to just record a Skype call. You should I would say at least use a website like that, or have people record to their own machines.
Yeah. Yes, you don't have that compression loss of quality.
Yeah, because I know my internet is terrible. And there's definitely a lot of loss versus when I record on here. And the next question I was going to ask is about growing an audience and promoting your show. Very different from these technical kind of questions, but and I think we do different stuff, so I think that'll be, because like promoting a Pokemon actual play is really different from promoting just a straight D&D actual play versus a conversational podcast. So I wanted to ask about that and what advice y'all would give.
Social media is the great equalizer. You got to know how to be able to how to use it, how to find the tips and the tricks, how to reach out to find the people that have the similar interest as your podcast. I started with Facebook because, it's Facebook. It's easy, something that almost everybody has. I used a Facebook group to grow my audience before I even dropped my first episode. And so I kind of hit the ground running in that way. And that is where the vast majority of my engagement is. Because, you'll find somebody that's like, hey, this is a great group. And it's also a great network of podcasts. Let me add the people that I know that are also, fans of the same stuff I'm fans. So as the podcast or as the Facebook group grew, the listens grew. So it's kind of a symbiotic thing. Right now, it's like an Ouroboros. And and you got to just find different ways to keep them engaged. We do raffles and all that kinds of things, giveaways and all that stuff. And then of course you also have, on the other end, Twitter and the wonderful use of hashtags. Hashtags will help you find a lot of good stuff that far more people cruise hashtags than I thought they did. And so if I'm talking about Star Trek Discovery or something like that, then you throw a little hashtag in there, and anybody who, I just got done with season 2, let me see what everybody else is saying about it. Oh, there's a podcast talking about it too. Let me see what that's about. Social media is, I say, the great equalizer as far as engagement in whatever way you have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's an important point too, that like some stuff, like my video essay work, I would say hashtags haven't made a difference, or I wasn't really interested in them, or they didn't seem like a good idea. But then with actual play, people use hashtags all the time. Mm-hmm. So it also depends on what your audience is and what, like Facebook versus Twitter. And I guess that's also doing a little bit more research, because some of it you'll just be wasting your time, or if you're paying for ads. And then other times it might be extremely helpful.
I think with the Roaring Trainers, we had a couple things going for us. One, I'm not sure if this is true, definitely one of the first Pokemon podcasts out, like D&D Pokemon I think there's like one or two before us that it didn't last.
Y'all were really early on for sure with that.
Yeah, and it pretty unique too, because we kind of, what I wanted to see was a Pokemon story that grew up with me. I didn't want like the sort of kid thing. So like episode 1, you realize it's not for kids pretty early on. Mm-hmm. But it was a lot of fun. And then also so that was helpful for us because there wasn't a lot like that out there. There's a lot more now. Jonah's got a fantastic Pokemon podcast. There's a lot of other ones out there that are great. But also just, I think, especially in the actual play world, like getting to know other shows like Critical Bits and Quest Company, like just getting to know them and becoming friends on Twitter is where I met y'all, and just expanding there. And then we sort of share fans then, and then we all sort of grow. And I think that really helped in the actual play world. And then, yes, of course, hashtags. Everything's got hashtag D&D on it,
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's just, I did a couple of things where it's you try it without and you try it with, and obviously the hashtags absolutely make a difference.
Yeah.
I will say this in the note because I was going to bring that up. Like literally, like Shannon and I knew each other before we started a podcast together. But the reason why like we know Jonah and Adam is because we're all in the same kind of world. But you want to make sure you're doing this reach out and things like that more organically. Like a Facebook group is great because you're engaging people, talking about like finding people with similar interests, and then you can even if it's not your podcast group that you're in, don't spam it. But if someone's like, okay, I'm current on this one, I'm looking for a show, and you're like, okay, well, hey, we've shared some memes, we've enjoyed talking shit on the internet. I have a podcast if you want to check it out. But like I said, you want to do this organically, because if you immediately go into, especially for other groups that aren't yours or Discords, if you go in there and start spamming your stuff, no one's going to listen. They're not
because they don't care. They don't care about you. So why would they care about you?
And that's a rude thing to do. And then on top of that, if you're trying to if your show is trying to interact with other shows online, don't just tweet at people and say, listen to my show. That they're not going to do it. They're not going to like you. Don't DM them and say, when am I going to be on your show? What you do is, if you find a show you like and they're in like the same kind of like accessibility reach of like, because obviously like I as Critical Bits, I'm not gonna go tweet at the Adventure Zone and be like, hey y'all, what's up? We both ran a Powered by the Apocalypse game. But like the way that I think I started reaching out, like Jonah was a listener of Critical Bits, and that's how we started engaging. And then the way I reached out to like the Roaring Trainers, I heard about y'all, and I was like, all right, let me check this out. And I just listened to the first couple episodes, and I just actively tweeted. I was like, oh, this was great in this one. I like this thing. And even if you can only listen to the first couple episodes of something, just show that you're kind of engaging, and that will get people to like respond. And yes, it is a little bit of guilt. Like, why should I check out their show? But even that, like, even if it's just like, all right, well, a favor for a favor, that can kind of get people in there. But like I said, you want to make sure to do this organically. And then Shane and I have talked about this on another panel we're on together. There's a thing called Follow Friday on Twitter.
Oh God!
And people think that they can just tag every show that's like theirs, and then don't do it. Never do that.
The bad thing to do.
You look foolish. No one likes it. No one likes that you tag them in a mass group. Now, what you can do on Follow Fridays, and you can do multiple posts on a Follow Friday.
And nothing wrong with that.
But you need to make it an actual reason to follow somebody. No one's going to do that. And but once again, on that same note, if you're actually doing these real posts and being like, hey, here's like, a small paragraph on why this show's actually worth it.
Mm-hmm.
That show's going to be like, oh, this is pretty tight. Someone's being helpful to me. Let me go check them out. Like I said, so like all of this reaching out is really good and a good way to do it, but you want to have it be organically. And then also one of the hardest things about podcasts you have to accept, word of mouth is the biggest thing, and you cannot affect that except for just making a good show people like enough to tell their friends. That's one of the hardest parts, and that kind of goes back to like having good production value and knowing how far you actually want to go with your show. Because if you're sitting there and wondering, should I spend $100 on Facebook or Twitter promoted ads to like get my reach of the show? No, what you should do is make your show better with that $100. Find out what you can buy or increase or improve, because if you just get better production value and make people care about your show, like they will do the work for you. And so that's what I'm saying, like organic reach. And then also like, if you have money and you want to put it into the show, eventually you can get to a point where like all your gear is good and you just want to get some ads, and that's fine. But especially and like, because this is more of an intro to podcasting, like just try to reinvest in your gear, your equipment. Hell, even if you don't know how to edit and you're the editor, go to lynda.com or one of the other million other like tutorial sites and buy yourself some tutorials on how to edit audio and stuff like that. Like even stuff like that is that making your podcast better and getting more word of mouth is going to get you so much more actual listeners and engagement than paying Zuckerberg or Jack $100.
Yeah, and I mean, going off of that, the word of mouth, it's so important, and engaging with other creators in your field. So that in that vein, like engaging with other creators in your field, doing so organically, where it's not just like, hey, I'm talking to you because I want to get something out of you. But even with like the Follow Friday stuff, if it's even if it's not a paragraph, even if it's like you have a thread, but everybody's got like a blurb, it shows that you did some amount of effort to like, hey, I know what you do like as a person, and I took a little bit of time to invest in your thing, right? And then like going off of that, if you develop those relationships with like other creators or what have you, like you can potentially get to the point where you like reach out about like cross promotion. Like Quest Company has cross promoted with both Critical Bits and Roaring Trainers and DM's Treehouse and like all of these things. Like you get to the point where it's like, yeah, we like are in the same area. We're both creators, we're putting content out there, and we think that we can help each other, get our audiences to engage with each other's products. And if it's ads or if it's guests, whatever the case may be, like having that, I mean, that's a huge way to have word of mouth and get more interest. It's like, oh yeah, I like Joel. I heard that he's playing this weird dude with a ghost boyfriend on this Quest Company thing, and so yeah, I'll go check that out.
So on top of like self-promotion, I wanted to ask about audience retention and engagement. And I thought this would be an interesting question for Nash, because you've been doing this for 20 years.
Yeah.
Do you have like, would you say like what percentage of your audience is like people who've been there from the beginning, or like how have you had to change, over time?
Oh my God. My percentage, it's hard to say. How I've had to change over time is, well, for one, I went from audio to video, but it's pretty much just been trying to keep abreast of when platforms change, keeping an idea of, you get a feel for when things are about to shift. When Justin TV picked up, I realized, oh, this video thing is about to take off. I think I've got a kind of a, I don't know if this would work for everybody, but I do have kind of a unique thing that I record the podcast live. So I have an audience interaction while we're doing it. I do have
just like built into it.
Yeah, I do. I I know a lot of people. Some of them have been there for years. Some of them are always, some drop in, some come out. Cultivating a community, and even if you're just doing a recorded one, cultivating a community is just a matter of giving people a place to interact about what you're creating. Reddit group, it could be Discord chat, it could be something. But and give them a place where it's not like, you know, complete free for all. People are throwing crap on the walls and stuff. You've got to give them a place where they can interact with each other, where you can interact with them. And that's how you keep them, because it's you've done the parasocial video.
Well, yeah, Critical Bits has a Discord.
Yeah.
It's just that Joel and I both left it because it was too weird. That was the thing. And it
Adam
also
in a
it depends
Discord
on the
he left
community,
too.
Yeah. Yep.
I think the intensity of like a fan Discord, I feel for some reason like a Facebook group might not, if it's more casual, might not be as strange or parasocial versus like a fandom oriented Discord channel. Like it depends on what community you're fostering, I guess.
Yeah, my Facebook group is built on two things, well, three things really: pop culture, my podcasts, and general shenanigans. And that seems to work just fine for me. And I know that there is a fan Discord for it, but I elect not to be part of that because I do want a little bit of distancing. I interact, like the Facebook group is ridiculously active. There's where you'll find me the most at, podcast aside. But I do believe there is a little bit of a level of separation there. So I let them do their thing on Discord, and whatever they talk about, they talk about. But I'll focus on wrangling the cats in the Facebook group and be good there.
Yeah, I feel like a big difference is like Facebook, you know, you're not expected to have immediate response to things to get into conversation. So not everyone feels like they have to rush in. Discord is a very like if you're not here right now, you're gonna log in a day later and just be like, oh, why does everyone have their name changed, or what's this new?
Just like
There's a new
dopamine
dank
hits.
meme.
Yeah. But I don't know. I think one thing that we've done on our show for like fan retention and fun things outside the Discord is because like, you know, you can do giveaways depending on what your show is. You know, lots of plays, you know, we're in the actual play world, so lots of people do dice giveaways. You know, other shows they will give away their merch and things like that. We just as like a riff, like somebody like Paul, who plays a character named Jerry, because we're like a superhero teen superhero podcast. So one of the characters named Sad Sack, who just has a paper bag with a frowning face on his face. Paul always jokingly said he did that because that's the easiest thing to draw, and he was not wrong. And so we were coming upon Inktober, and then he just jokingly was like, "Oh, what about Sacktober?" And then just changed prompts to be like, "All right, here's 31 different styles to draw Sad Sack again." People like we had so many people just submitting stuff throughout the month. Obviously, like Inktober itself, the first 5 days it was popping off, and then after that, everyone's like, "All right, anxiety hit." So what we did is we did a bonus episode based around this, and then I said, if you did an entry for every 31 days, I will like record a line and send it to you to like dub over for the podcast, and then I lied to everybody because I wanted people to try hard. And then I went back and said, all right, well, if you did 5 entries, I'm going to let you do it. So we had 17 of our fans do enough entries in this thing where like we recorded a whole episode, and then I recorded like 17 lines that I said and like sent them a recording and a script and be like, all right, here it is. Just send me that. And then I cut it all in and then put it as a plug episode. And like people were flipping because we did a live listen to it, because, you know, we just put it on its own, but we did a live listen, so everyone listened together, and literally just, it's a very simple thing, and I wouldn't do it a lot, but like having people just hear their voice in a podcast they liked in the most simple thing, people were flipping out. And that really, and then also throughout that whole month, like I said, we had like a whole month of people posting, here's more Critical Bits fan art and stuff like that. And then I guess if people do fan art of you, make sure to credit them, and then to just tell them thank you and like show it off and things like that, because it's a really cool thing. And then just coming from, you know, if you're a fan of something and you made some art for them, it's cool to hear it back from them. But also in the same thing of like, you get to choose how much you interact with them, and just in general, you should keep a healthy barrier. But that's a whole other
That's past the intro to podcast.
Yeah, that's past the intro to
That's
podcasting.
advanced podcasting.
That's the fourth podcasting course. It's called "You're Famous Now and Things Are Going Poorly."
You got popular and it got weird.
This is what you wanted, right? Yeah, I think John Hartness is like involved with Con Carolina stuff. He's like a fantasy author. He's on Authors and Dragons, and I think they have like a Patreon perk where people can like watch them play a game as they play it or something. I'm not sure.
They do, yes.
Yeah, I'm like I do live streams and stuff, but as far as like having a private little thing with fans, that definitely works for them. But I think there are just some things where I'm like, I would not be willing to do that. That's too weird for me. Whereas like sending something off and having someone record a line, I had no problem with that. So it's very important to kind of gauge, like there's, like we were talking about earlier, there's no like one size fits all. It's gauging what you're comfortable with, what is good for your show, what's good for your genre, how much time you're going to spend learning audio engineering and stuff like that.
If you do an actual play, it's a lot.
Yes, because we do like sound effects. You don't have to, but like music, sound effects. That's when we started Critical Bits, I told Joel, I was like, this is not going to be, I mean, we agreed. This is not going to be just like listening to
Shannon strong-armed me into quality.
Yeah, I was like, we need sound effects.
She was right.
We need music. You need to cut the dead time because I don't want people to feel like they're playing a game with friends. I want this to feel like you're listening to a TV show or something.
Yeah.
Whereas other people, that's part of their marketing in Critical Role. The opening song says your nerdy best friends who are right there beside you. And I'm like, I'm not your friend.
Yeah.
That's my whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it was the right call. I mean, I remember like, because I started listening when you guys were like super, super early and it was like maybe 2 or 3 episodes, but I was like, oh, this sounds good. I like this. And then I strong-armed Joel into letting me run amok all over the podcast.
I think this is something good to note, too. And I didn't learn this in podcasts. I learned this from making sketches. I made sketches for numerous years. That's actually how much Shannon. And then for 3 years, I made 3 sketches a month with 2 friends for a show that we did. And we just had a lot of output. You gotta be willing to try something and then have it be bad. And then I think if you're starting a podcast, especially too, if you're like trying to figure out the format of it, you're trying to figure out the flow and get comfortable, be okay to record a couple episodes that are never going to see the light of day. Like it's hard. This is definitely a harder thing to do as you get deeper into it. But like, this is all for like intro into it. But like, if you and your friends want to do just like kind of a more talking head conversation thing like that, do like 2 or 3 and be ready to burn them. Don't make it something on a subject. Like if you're doing like a specific subject podcast, don't make it something you really want to do. Like just do kind of some throwaway subjects because you need to get comfortable in your own kind of, it's not even saying like a persona, but like, you know, how you're going to present yourself, how to talk. If you've never talked to a microphone before, it's weird. It's awkward. You have to get used to not talking over your friends, allowing people to actually make a conversation and not talk at somebody. And so I think that one good thing to kind of go into if you're starting a new show and I'm talking like new to everything. Like I think everyone in here had a lot of outside experience separate from podcasting. So it was easy for them to like jump in. But if you're new to everything, like just be willing to record a couple episodes and scrap them. And it's not saying to be discouraged, but like that, it's just going to be, it's going to sound so much better if your 5th episode that you have recorded is the first public episode to anybody. Because then like Jonah was saying, you know, he heard my show and like Jonah, like you started engaging with us very quickly and like, you know, I followed back and we you know, started working together. But it was because like we put in a shit ton of effort. And because I remember for the first one, you know, we did a couple passes. We sent it around to a fair amount of friends that we like trusted their opinion on. I just be like, cool, like really be brutally honest. What do you not like? What would you cut? And it's not necessarily you have to take every single note you get, but like just that's just the thing that I think not a lot of people are kind of going into prepared of like, okay, if we get an episode, we should just get it out right away. Like your podcast is going to sound, your podcast, it doesn't matter if you drop it now or 2 months from now. Like, and especially too, it's really hard to do anything that's like really like time specific, like unless you're a news podcast, and then you shouldn't be doing that as an indie thing. But anyways, we're not getting into that. Like I said, like give yourself some time to actually like get a feel for it and then do that if you're really starting out brand new. And you'll thank yourself so much later because you can go back and hear what problems you have and fix them. And then eventually you'll get to it, be like, okay, cool. I think this is like the first one we put out. And then also just in general, if you can get a backlog, do it.
Just gonna say that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
if you can, like before you ever start releasing anything, just build it up, because you're only going to thank yourself later. But I agree with what you're saying about that, about trying it, burn it if you need to. That's actually something that if I was to go back and do things differently, like I would like have had us do that from the beginning, because we dove in episode 1, had no clue what we were doing. It's like, yeah, we'll throw this up, see what happens. And then you go back, it's like, oh well, it would have been easy to like change this as this and this. But you already put the first one out there. It's like the first episode of like a long-term thing, so you're like, it is what it is. But if I had to go back and do it over again, I would. It's different after you've got your first one under your belt or whatever. If you start a different podcast, it's like, okay, well, we know what we're doing now, and it's the same team, and we can go and do this other thing. That's a little different. But for the very first time out, even if you're like a performer, like we're all actors and stuff, but it's like, it's just weird. It's just a weird and different thing. So practice it first before you do it for real. Yeah.
Have friends who aren't afraid to give you constructive criticism. I think that's really valuable, because the internet
Absolutely.
will. Oh my God!
Yeah.
They're putting it out on the internet.
I mean, they'll
publicly.
give you criticism, might not be constructive.
Yeah.
Well, we're at about. It's only supposed to be 50 minutes long, so
Whoops.
well, let's wrap up. I'm gonna go back around, and if you have any like closing remarks or anything you wanted to add, I'm gonna give everybody a chance, and then we'll all say our Twitter stuff again and wrap it up. So, Adam, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Learn how to use the basic editing things very quickly: noise gates, compression, EQs. Try to learn how to use those effectively very quickly, because they will help you tremendously. And good luck on your podcast endeavor. Good luck.
Yeah, good luck. Yeah.
Daryl.
Yeah, like Adam said, good luck on your podcast endeavors. If you plan on interviewing people, do your research first.
Yes, please.
Also, make sure that your idols are not the first people you interview. Don't fall into the trap that I fell into, which my comic book idol, who wrote Captain Marvel for the longest. She's like, yeah, sure, why not? That was not a great interview, because it was my first interview.
Oh.
I've since gone back and interviewed her again, and things flowed much nicely. But yeah, make sure that you do your research. Have your stuff prepared. Come to the table prepared. If nothing else, come to the table prepared.
Jonah?
Yeah, I mean, outside of the stuff that was said in that last little bit, just like if you're doing something that's like a game or like narrative based, know what story you want to tell. Or if it's information, just like know what you want to tell people, but just like have your North Star, know what your goal is and what you're trying to do, and always just always check in with yourself. This like, am I still going toward this? Great, love it. If not, how do I course correct to get back to that? But how do I get back to what I want this to be?
Nash?
You're never going to stop learning stuff. There's always going to be new things. Things are going to change. You're going to have to adapt to them, especially considering we're based around computers. I mean, I can't. I've gone from XP to Windows 10.
Wow.
And I don't know if anybody's here remember the changeover from XP to Windows Vista, Windows 7, when they completely gutted the audio underlaying part of it, and I had to learn all over how to remix my stuff because they changed everything. That's just one example. All of this stuff, be prepared to keep learning, because it's going to change. If you're going to be in this for a while, it's going to change.
And Joel?
Yeah, if you're a group of white dudes and you want to start a comedy podcast with no aim, don't. There's already enough. What's that? That's my only advice.
Yep.
Yeah, because you have one of those before Critical Bits that you didn't.
I hated it. I hated it so much.
Yeah, you have
I hated it. I did it with two friends that they kept telling me they really wanted to do it, and I kept telling them we needed to focus. And then after we did a few, like 10 or so episodes, I quit and told them I never wanted it to be out again. So just don't do it. Just do something else with your time.
Okay, well, I'm Shannon. We'll go back around with Twitter stuff. I'm Shannon Strucci. You can find me on Twitter at Plenty of Alcoves, and I play Kim on Critical Bits, and I'm the film correspondent for Struggle Session, which is at Critical Bitcast and at Struggle Sesh on Twitter. And then we'll go again backwards. Joel, just like plugs and
Yeah,
whatever.
I'm Joel Rez. I'm the GM and editor of Critical Bits. You can find us at Critical Bitcast or criticalbitcast.com. It's a teen superhero show. Shannon's on it. It's very fun. We have a lot of other side series. And then I've also been doing more stuff on Twitch, which is twitch.tv/criticalbitcast. And then Jonah is actually on this. I want to plug this. Biese Comienza con V. It's a Passions de las Pasiones live stream where it's pretty much a telenovela role-playing game. And it's one of the funnest things I've done. And we do that every Friday at 8 p.m. So go check that out.
Nash?
Pretty much links to all my stuff you can find at radiodeadair.com. Live shows every Monday at 9, typically. Do game streams through the week. And yeah, we do a recording session on Mondays. So, yeah.
Jonah?
Yeah, I am Jonah Jackson. You can find me at Jonah M. Jackson on Instagram and Twitter. I am a player and GM on the Quest Company and Quest Company Junior. You can also find those on Instagram and Twitter at The Quest Company and at Questco Junior.
Daryl?
Yeah, like I said at the top of the show, you can find me on Twitter at Seedalicious, SEEDALICIOUS. You can find my podcast network, Poprika, POPRIKA, wherever podcasts are. The Facebook group that I talked about, facebook.com/group/Poprika podcast.
And Adam?
I'm Adam LaGrave. You can find me on Twitter at Adam LaGrave. That's where I plug all my stuff, but I'm a player and on the Pokemon podcast, The Roaring Trainers. I'm also a player and DM on DM's Treehouse. And speaking of Twitch, I just started doing this on the DM's Treehouse Twitch. I live draw D&D maps poorly, but it's fun. And I try to be Bob Ross, but of map making. Just positive things out there.
That's the most you-sounding thing I've ever heard.
That's all you needed to throw into that
Thank
sentence
you.
was beans, and then it was
yeah. And I eat beans loudly.
All right, well, on that note, thank y'all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.